I didn't think about it too much. And so I went to usnews.com and I just looked at the top engineering schools. And UFI came up as like number 3 or 4 on the computer engineering list. And so I was like, I was told it's cold, but I was like, how bad can it be? And then I showed up, and then there was and it was pretty cold. But
In your shorts and t-shirt from Mumbai.
right.
Hey there, good people in crypto land. I'm Matt Leising, and this is my podcast, DeCent People. Welcome to the conversation. Today, I've got a great guest on, Kanav Kariya. He is president at Jump Crypto, and he has risen to that lofty position at only, he was 25 years old when he was appointed there. He started as an intern coming out of the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, I believe. We talk about kind of growing up in India as part of a large extended family. We trade notes on the types of Legos we had as kids. Kind of talks to me about how it was going from the teeming Mumbai neighborhoods in India to rural Illinois for college. Then we talk about what's going on with the Jump Crypto project called Fire Dancer, which is creating another set of validators for the Solana blockchain. And lastly, we try and fail not to talk about FTX, but it comes up. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. It was a good talk, and let's get to it. And just a quick disclaimer, Jump Crypto is an investor in Decentral Media, Inc. Yeah, so do you think we're going to be able to have this conversation and not mention 3 certain letters? Or maybe 2 sets of 3 letters?
Yeah. There's a few sets of 3 letters that are non-negotiable within crypto these days. So
Yeah. Ass should be one of them for
add that to the list. Yep.
Well, hey man, it's great to have you on the show. I really appreciate it, and I've been looking forward to kind of learning more about your background and how you came to be heading Jump Crypto at such a ripe early age of 25. And we're going to get into a lot of what you guys are doing there at Jump and kind of the broader market, kind of zeitgeist at now. But at first, I'd love to just kind of jump back and ask, about your background. And can you tell me I think you grew up in India, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Matt. And thanks for having me on. I grew up in India, in Mumbai. I came to the US during my undergraduate college days to study computer engineering at the University of Illinois. And so, I've been in the country for a little over 8 years now.
Do you come from a big family? You have a lot of brothers and sisters, or?
Yeah, so I grew up in a joint family, which is a Indian English term, I think, which means that my dad and his brother and their parents all live together under one roof. And so I grew up in a pretty big household, 7 of us in the house. I'm an only child, but since my dad's brother was also around, my dad's brother's daughter was like a sister to me. And so I didn't really know the distinction until I was a little older.
Right. Yeah. Cousins, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And we just call that an extended family here in the US. Right. Was there always a lot of commotion and stuff around the house?
Yeah. We had tons of guests. India's a pretty communal place. You always have aunts and uncles over and friends, and it's a good time. Yeah.
And what was Mumbai like at that time when you were a kid?
Yeah, Mumbai has always been a really vibrant city. It never sleeps. There's tons going on. There's a lot of drive. There's lots of hustle. It's a city that has a lot of opportunity. It also has a lot of inequality. Those are things that I didn't appreciate back then growing up. But I was very fortunate to have a very comfortable upbringing in Mumbai, one of the suburban areas. It's definitely a hungry population. It's the big city where folks from across the country come to live their dreams. And it shows in kind of the drive and the passion of the city.
It kind of sounds like the New York City of India, where it never sleeps. Everybody's going there to kind of like make their mark on the world.
Yeah, it's dirty, it's busy, it's cosmopolitan, it's a melting pot. It's all those things.
Yeah. What were you into as a kid? Did you like school, or were you into sports, or what was kind of like at 8 years old or 10 years old?
Yeah, I was a quieter kid generally. I really liked math, and I liked video games, like Legos, um, and I loved reading books. That was a lot of what I did. I never had trouble keeping myself entertained, even just by myself. And so I spent a lot of time doing that kind of thing. When I really got into video games, I also spent some time trying to pirate stuff off the internet. Tried to spend way too many hours playing games, much to the chagrin of the others around me. But
Yeah, you mentioned Legos. I remember when I was a kid, Legos were just blocks. Like you didn't have like the Millennium Falcon kit that you could buy. Did you have that, or am I a little older than you? I'm definitely a little older than you, but yeah, I don't think Legos were nearly as cool when I was a kid as they are now, because I get them like when my boys were a little bit younger. Some of the stuff you can buy now is just absolutely amazing.
they definitely weren't as cool. Yeah, some of the stuff that you get today is just awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I remember I had
yeah,
this battleship thing that you could build, and I just couldn't figure out how to build it. So my dad and I built the whole thing together, and that meant that he built the whole thing. But that was the fanciest one I had, where you could assemble this thing. It was pretty hard to build, but that was a memorable one.
yeah. Some of those booklets, there's like 5 of them, and they're each like 50 pages long. It's just like Jesus.
Yep, yep.
Speaking of your dad, what did he do?
Well, my dad, I come from a pretty entrepreneurial family, and so my dad, my granddad started this business exporting automobile parts for light and heavy commercial vehicles, and so my dad and my uncle, kind of ran that business when their dad kind of had a very unfortunate early death, and so they took a lot of responsibility very early on in their life, and yeah, they continued to run that business up until actually a couple months ago, which is when they finally decided to sunset it and enjoy a bit of a retired life. But yeah.
Nice, that's great. And then, like you mentioned, video games. What kind of drew you into that? What game, or was it like a system like Nintendo or something like that?
Yeah, I got a Game Boy when I was like very young, and I remember the Game Boys weren't available in India, but I had extended family in the U.S. that had flown in, and they had got me and my cousin a Game Boy, and I played Croc on the Game Boy, and I think I was just hooked by it. And then we had a PlayStation right after, and we played like this Disney Bugs Bunny game a bunch, and for some reason I think it just kept like. We probably had like a pirated version of this. We only played like the first 2 levels, but we played those first 2 levels over and over again for for maybe a whole year.
Yeah. Thinking about Game Boy, the coolest thing about it was you could take it with you, like what kid didn't want to take video games with them, like anywhere they went. Like it was kind of a precursor to a cell phone, I guess. So I was doing some reading on you, and I read someplace that you originally kind of thought you were headed towards the army.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, so I was really into war movies, and I really liked a lot of strategy games where you could take control of like armies and stuff. And I was told a story of like when I was younger of my granddad really wanting to be in the army as well, but he didn't have he didn't have really great vision, and so they didn't have. And at that time in the army, they wouldn't let you join if you had to wear glasses. And so he couldn't make it.
Okay.
And then for some reason that story struck with me, and we used to watch a lot of movies. We're a very patriotic family as well, and so like Independence Day in India, we're doing marathons of all the movies, and I watched them all growing up. And so yeah, that was along the way.
And I mean, at that point, it was not. I mean, Pakistan and India were kind of having some tension, right? At that point, it wasn't like just a sort of. I don't want to say like meaningless, but like it could have been something real in the army at that point. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. So by the time I grew up, there weren't any outright wars. There's always been a bit of a cold war between India and Pakistan, and it's manifested in terrorism and all these different things over the years. But definitely my parents have had experiences of that, and I think in the 70s there was a war, and and that gives rise to some national tensions across the borders. I think relationships like amongst like the younger generations are like fairly good at this point. There's obviously still political tension, but the internet has enabled those cultures to cross chasms, and so you see a lot of cross pollination of entertainment, music, YouTube, things like that, where people try to bridge those gaps and celebrate any the shared root of culture at least.
And were you into like Bollywood movies and stuff, or were you getting a lot of American or Western culture, or was there a mix of it?
I was never big into Bollywood movies actually, and we did watch some Western movies. We used to have we used to watch a lot of classics. My uncle's a big movie guy, and so he's always excited to watch something, and so we'd get Baskin Robbins and watch a movie. Those are pretty
nice
classic thing to do. So watched a lot of American classics, international classics.
Just before we move on, what's your favorite war movie? Just got to get that on the record.
For some reason, Where Eagles Dare is jumping to mind, but I think there's a few that I've really.
Which one?
Where Eagles Dare.
Oh.
It's like a World War II movie, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Okay, haven't heard of that one. Thought you were going to say Platoon or something like Apocalypse Now. Cool. So, and then as you got older and like teenage years, did you like where were you setting your sights? Like you were said you were getting into computers and video games and pirating some stuff. Was like the bigger computer science kind of world open to you at that point, or what were you thinking? In the years leading up to your decision to come to the U.S. for college.
I definitely was in one of those whizzes that's been writing code since I was 12. There's dozens of those in the crypto space. There's this kid Gajesh out in Goa who's 14, and he's been writing crypto like blockchain programs for 2 years now. And there's a lot of that. But no, when I was 12, I was enjoying video games. I was very interested in computers. I didn't necessarily know I wanted to do computer science or computer engineering, but I came to the US on a vacation to go see Disneyland when I was 13. And I toured a couple college campuses here while I was here, and I was like, oh man, these look awesome. And so I knew that I wanted to come to the States to get my education, because just the infrastructure and the quality of the education seemed very appealing. And I always knew I liked math a lot, I liked physics a lot, and I enjoyed computers, and that kind of arbitrarily led me down to the path of picking computer engineering as a thing that I would study in college.
Yeah, you're speaking of kids that have been coding since they were like 10. I just interviewed Nick Johnson. Do you know him? He's the guy that kind of did the Ethereum naming service.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know the ENS, but I didn't know the story behind the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's the guy that kind of got that through consensus and spearheaded that project. And was doing some research on him, and I found a CNN article when he was 10 years old, and it was a couple of years before the Y2K bug, and he had coded a way to make sure that computers didn't crash after Y2K. And he's like 10, and so you're right, man. There's like in crypto, you'll run across those people like every other person.
Yeah, it's like all the really smart kids that have access to the internet but no means to get a credit card, and they want to do cool stuff on the internet that can potentially interact with like money-like things. And now they're like, shit, I can do this crypto thing.
Yeah.
And it's like so liberating. And you speak to some of these kids and it's like the same ideology that draws them in over and over again. And even like the original batch of kids that's sprouted onto like the early waves of like the guys that have been in, foundation and building some of the stuff in 2016, 17. It's a lot of kids like, high school teacher introduced them to Bitcoin or this or that. And it's a big part of the crypto culture.
Yeah, I mean, look at Vitalik, writing about Bitcoin when he was in high school and creating, inventing Ethereum when he was 19. Pretty amazing. What was it? So compared to like India and the opportunity you would have had there for college and then the United States, you said you really wanted like something appealed to you about the U.S. What was the difference there that made you want to come back here to the U.S. For college?
Yeah, things that stood out to me as a 13-year-old back then were different than the things that stick out to me now, of course. But the things back then were a little bit silly, but indicative of things that were broader. The college campuses all had computers, right? Which is it's like table stakes expectations. And college campuses in India now do as well. And Indian infrastructure has improved dramatically over the years. But back then, there was there wasn't an emphasis on taking written notes for everything, on not having to regurgitate everything you've learned. And the campus itself seemed open and broad. It seemed like people could pick and choose their curriculum and pick classes that appealed to them, and build a program that would really suit their needs rather than something that was more prescriptive. And those things really struck out to me when I first came here. Now kind of reflecting back, I think it's a lot of the same, but a little bit broader on just the whole principle of freedom overall. Everything here is less prescriptive overall, and so you can pick your own curriculum, you can pick your own career, you can pick your own timeline, you can pick your own group of friends. There's it's a very big heterogeneous set of things to pick between, and a lot of people here are kind of doing what they want rather than doing what they need to do, which is an unfortunate reality of a developing country, right? Everyone has to study the things that will lead to some reasonable economic outcomes for them. That's like a survival thing almost. Relative to here, you can afford to explore things that more particularly fancy, and kind of things that interest you, and just having people from all those different walks of life, and those perspectives was definitely eye-opening or interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the campus in Urbana, Champaign-Urbana, right, with the University of Illinois, that's quite a ways from Southern California and Disneyland. How did you come to want to go to Illinois, and was that must have been quite a culture shock coming from Mumbai to kind of rural Illinois to study in college?
Yeah. I didn't think about it too much, and so I went to usnews.com and I just looked at the top engineering schools. And U of I came up as like number 3 or 4 on the computer engineering list, and so I was like, I was told it's cold, but I was like, how bad can it be? And then I showed up, and then there was and it was pretty cold, but
in your shorts and t-shirt from Mumbai,
right. But yeah, and the other big difference is, of course, Mumbai is a huge city, and like you pointed out, Champaign is definitely rural Midwest. But I actually really enjoyed that experience as well. I think there's a lot of magic to having a campus town where it's all about the kids, and it's a little microcosm of just this life there. And
yeah, I went to a similar. I mean, where I went to college, it was at UC Santa Barbara, and all the students live in this little community called Isla Vista. It's only about a square mile, but there's got to be 15 to 20,000 college kids crammed into that very small space. So the whole kind of town is sort of like run by college students. So yeah, I know that feeling, and it's a really nice. It's really nice if you can find that at that time in your life, because it feels like it was really good to just have all your peers around you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're into computer science at that point. Had you heard about Bitcoin, or what was your how did those paths kind of cross for you?
Yeah, so I heard of Bitcoin, and I'd tried to use Bitcoin for a few things, just to buy stuff on Reddit a couple of times, but I hadn't really gotten into it like super deep, and I managed to land this internship at Jump Trading, which back then they'd opened this research office at Jump Labs at the University of Illinois. And they were doing a lot of collaborations with the university on research projects for, one of the things was crypto trading. One of the things was they had like a mining rig in the closet. They were working with the VR professors that helped build the Oculus to like abstract trading screens, and they were doing networking and machine learning stuff. It was just a lab to build cool stuff, collaborate with the university, and managed to land an internship at Jump. I ended up working at the Jump Labs office for during the semester, and that's in like the very early innings of when Jump was kicking off its crypto efforts overall. And it was an awesome environment. You're spinning chairs, it's young people, experienced people, just learning about crypto, and that's how I really got into it. So,
and did you know, like being at Champaign, that campus? I think that's where Bill Guarinas and Paul DeSoma went to. They were that was their alma mater. Were you aware of that at the time, or was Jump like well known at that campus, or what was that like?
Yeah, Jump's always been like quiet, relatively. Prior to crypto was very quiet, a little secretive, kind of, under the radar. And
You should ask around at Jump about this, but I wrote the first profile of Jump Trading for Bloomberg Markets Magazine, and they just really did not like it because they were very secretive. They did not want to be known in the public, but we had been covering all these things on Wall Street and Chicago trading firms, and we just we had to write about Jump. So of course, Paul and Bill didn't want to talk to us, and nobody talked to us, but we still wrote the story. I think that's I got Carissa Felger her job there because I think she was hired pretty much right after that to be their PR person, and she's still there to this day. So
Chris is great.
yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you though. You were just like Jump were they well known at the campus though, as like, because obviously it sounds like they were like really going there to looking for talented kids like you.
Yeah. They were well known within like a small niche community of the computer engineers in junior and senior year and sophomore year who were looking for internships because it was like the best internship you could get. And so they were known for that reason, just for, kids that really wanted to do like low latency C++ stuff. But they still managed to keep a low profile. They weren't at all the career fairs. They weren't advertising a bunch of places. It was like their recruiting was very like, network based. They would try to go to the professors, find the best kids through them. Was more, they tried to go more invitation versus advertising. Yeah.
And is that how you got introduced to them? Was it like through a professor, or was it like a job fair?
It wasn't a job fair. It was through another peer who worked at Jump, who I ended up knowing through a few degrees of connection, and who then ended up referring me for an interview, which is then how I ended up at Jump. Yeah.
Cool. All right. And so you've got an internship, but you're still going to college, and then and your internship was in crypto, correct?
Yeah. It was building very early crypto trading infrastructure in like a sandbox environment. It was a trading project for interns, designed so that interns could still work on building trading infrastructure without messing up all of the other Jump trading stuff or needing access to all those things. And so we could just go off and do our own thing and work under this small encapsulated bubble.
And what did you think at that time? Like, you said you had a little bit of experience with Bitcoin, but now that you're kind of in the trenches and Jump is, probably got its hands in all sorts of different projects and coins, did that really open your eyes up to it? Or was there a certain coin or a protocol that really sort of like, made you see the potential of what everybody was talking about here?
Yeah. I think it was a large function of just sitting in it. Because the first time you hear kind of some of the ideas of Bitcoin, or you read the paper, at least to me, kind of just didn't like instantly jump out. As kind of what this means. And then you kind of like sit and contemplate some of like the accomplishments that they've made, and they're interesting from this computer science perspective. But then, then you could like marinating in the ideas a little bit more. It's like, okay, you can build this globally distributed ledger that has these update rules that are kind of pre-specified, that allow people to maintain records of things without any central intermediary or trusted authority maintaining them. And then you go to Ethereum, and then now you can use this ledger for arbitrary computation, and now you can build this entire layer of coordination for society on top of kind of unintermediated rails, and then those concepts start to feel really powerful, and I think it was just like the sitting in it that made me excited. Yeah.
And so I think then after you graduated, you got hired at Jump. Is that correct?
Yeah. Came back to Chicago. And yeah, the crypto, it was, I think we were, by the time I joined, I think we were already at the 2017 crypto bull market had just ended. So my internship for 8 months or 10 months was before the 2017 bull run, as it just began to kind of run up, and by the time I joined 1 year later, after having finished the school year, it was the
crash.
It was the crash.
Crypto winter had set in.
Mm-hmm.
But the old adage is things are built in a winter, right? We're in that phase right now. So when you came back to Jump as an employee, what were you working on?
So I was working on a couple of different things. I was working on like the trading platform infrastructure, which is,
Mhm.
there's like helping build the systems that Jump uses to interact with the markets. So the exchange connectivity with the exchanges, the strategies that they use to trade. And then the thing that I really wanted to work on, which is, the things that I eventually worked on a few months in, was on the quant research side of it, where you're trying to build the predictive models that help you, that inform the trading decisions. And so I was working across both those things and helping building infrastructure for the trading platform and for the quant platform.
Yeah, cool. And what were you guys thinking at the time? Because we've spoken about how Jump is kind of has been private about its business for a long time, but I think on the crypto side, I think there was always an idea that you guys would want to go public with it. But was there some sort of thinking among the executives there that like we need to get to a certain milestone or some sort of phase in crypto before we sort of like go public? Or was there any kind of thinking like that behind the scenes about when you guys wanted to be more out in the open about what you guys were doing?
The decision to go public came a few years later. And it was largely informed by the fact that if we're building stuff that involves rallying communities around the work we're doing or sharing research with platforms that we're working on, that we needed to have a consolidated voice to speak onto. Prior to that, there wasn't any kind of business benefit from being outspoken. As a prop trading firm, even in the crypto space, there was no business benefit to advertising what Jump was doing. And being quiet and getting work done was the most efficient way to work. And that, when that changed, we decided to kind of move on. And so it was just strongly informed by what the business model needed at that time.
Just for listeners, like, how old were you when you got hired by Jump?
So I started my internship 2017 January, and so I was 20 then maybe. And when I came back full time, I was maybe 22 already. Yeah.
Okay, so you come back full time as a 22-year-old, but then by the time you're 25, you're president of Jump Crypto, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. What do you ascribe that to? How do you how did you have such a meteoric rise there? What was it? Was it just a perfect fit for you, or what? How would you describe that?
Yeah, it was certainly a great fit, Matt. In the 3 years, or 4 years prior to that appointment, I had the opportunity to wear a lot of different hats. And so I started working on the trading infrastructure project. Then I was working on some of the predictive modeling. As time kind of passed, I saw a lot of the business development opportunities for Jump to use its liquidity to do more business in the crypto space. And so I shifted my focus to working on those opportunities. And a lot of those opportunities really began to pay off. And I started to don that hat more and more. And as someone that had, had played all those different roles, given the role that we expected to play as Jump Crypto, in playing in this triangle across research and development, trading, and partnerships, I was sitting in a unique role as having, viewpoint into all of those and a track record of some, success over the few years. And Jump is, it's an incredibly supportive place. I have tons of folks around me that are very talented, very experienced. And, over time, I got to learn from, all the key executives across all the functions, and I want trust to, be able to have that seat. So I, definitely very fortunate, to also be in a market that had that meteoric rise to let me then have the similar rise in my career. But yeah.
So in the last couple of years, you guys have been, spearheading a lot of different ventures. One is, I think is it Pyth or Pith?
Yeah, I say Pith. Some folks say Pyth, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Pith is it's a pricing service, right, for assets that are on the Solana blockchain. Is that correct?
So that's exactly right, Matt. It's an Oracle product. An Oracle is effectively a pricing service that enables prices to be read by applications that are built on blockchains. And so it aggregates pricing sources from a lot of first-party data providers like trading firms, like exchanges, and it enables them to share this data with applications building on the blockchain. So it started with the Solana blockchain, but now it's available on north of 6 blockchains, I want to say, and it powers over 100 applications as of a few weeks ago.
It was earlier this year that you guys said that you were going to help Solana kind of become more decentralized. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how that's going?
Yeah, that's a really exciting initiative. It's one that we call Fire Dancer internally, and I think that's also the brand that is now being marketed under. So Fire Dancer is a fully independent second validator client implementation for Solana. So what that means is, the Solana blockchain as a protocol is meant to update based on certain rules. And then the Solana team has written a piece of software that everyone, all the validators of the Solana blockchain run to that then validate those rules and participate in the consensus on the blockchain. Now, every crypto project, really is really pushing very hard on decentralization on a lot of different vectors. A lot of the more commonly discussed ones are things like how many validators run the network. How many people would it take to collude to then to compromise the network. It's called the Nakamoto coefficient often in conversation. But there are many other dimensions of decentralization, right? For example, if Solana Labs, as the writer of the Solana client, decides to change a line in the change some code in the validator client, and folks were just blindly willing to just trust that implementation and download it and run it, which is what a lot of people participating in blockchain networks do. Theoretically, if somebody were able to compromise that client or compromise access to that piece of software, it would take down the entire network, right? Just by one single node failing, which is one development entity. So the Fire Dancer effort is an effort to have another implementation of this piece of software, which is very, very complicated and involved. It's Solana is trying to build one of the most complicated pieces of high-performance computing infrastructure in a decentralized setting that the world's ever seen, or in a distributed setting overall. And so in being able to rewrite this piece of software independently, it adds a lot of decentralization in the network in that now you have to compromise both implementations if you are to be able to cause safety failures or cause vulnerabilities in the network overall.
Is it like in Ethereum, where obviously there are 7 different clients that are running the Ethereum blockchain, and they're all written in different code languages, and then you could see that's a pretty good way to build a blockchain because, like you're saying, it's not a single point of failure. So, I think there was a Shanghai hacks on Ethereum back a couple of years ago that took down a couple of clients, but they didn't get all of them, so the network never went down. Is that sort of what we're talking about here with the Solana and the Fire Dancer project?
That's exactly right, man. Yeah. The Ethereum network is basically the only other network that has more than one client implementation. So Solana would be the second. And of course, Bitcoin does too, but that's a different class of blockchains.
Why did you guys decide to get involved here? Was it something that was Solana going around to folks and saying, hey, can you sort of like when you're trying to get, like a request for quotes or you know what I mean? Were they shopping around and trying to pick a partner to build this, or did you go to them, or how did it all come about?
It was the confluence of a lot of really great factors. And so, as I was mentioning earlier, Solana is a really complicated high performance distributed computing system. And so it has very, very challenging problems in networking, in the runtime and consensus. And Jump is a firm that's spent the last decade or so building high performance systems for the purpose of trading, really optimizing networks, really optimizing hardware, making sure that information is distributed around the world in a highly reliable, fast, robust fashion. And that kind of made us very uniquely capable of taking this challenge on because it's a very, very complicated technical undertaking. We've been involved in the Solana ecosystem for a few years now. And so we had a very good relationship with the community as a whole. It was the network had reached a stage of maturity where it could warrant an implementation of this nature. where it could benefit from someone taking a complete rewrite of this code base, potentially actually cleanly specifying the protocol, adding performance optimizations, and building something that would, push the protocol as a whole forward. And so, our existing relationship with Solana, our, unique kind of, I'd say, unique ability to actually take this problem on, and the clear need for it at that point in time, kind of all came together for us to, be able to make a decision to make that happen.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. So we joked at the beginning about those three little letters that we don't want to say, but I'm going to have to break that. And in the way, as you know, in the wake of FTX going down, Solana, kind of was, got dragged down with it. The price fell quite a bit. How are you guys viewing that as it was happening, and where do you think things stand now?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. One, to start with, the collapse is truly stunning. One of the most incredible things we've seen in the space, but even in the financial industry, kind of broadly for a while, since maybe Madoff and Enron and a few other things. So the impacts of it, I think, are being digested by the industry as a whole. Everyone's felt it. Solana, like you pointed out, has borne a good deal of the brunt of it. Sam was a big champion of the Solana blockchain. They had a sizable holding of it, as has been publicized. There's no doubting that it actually has impacted, the network, in kind of public trust and financially in the overhang of the liquidity that exists. But, that being said, the Solana community truly is, vast, decentralized, and, has a number of things going on for it outside of SAM and FTX. And so, I had a Twitter thread out, a couple weeks ago that outlined, the myriad efforts that are being conducted within the Solana ecosystem. There's the Firedancer client that we're working on. There's a phone that the Solana team is working on. There's the NFT ecosystem. There's the throughput. There's the DeFi. There's all the network effects that they've accrued by virtue of their existence and their battle hardness over the last few years. And all of that's still true. One of the major stakeholders in the network is out, but there's a million other incredible properties about it that still continue to exist and be really, really strong. And so, this is, in our view, an opportunity for the Solana ecosystem to kind of rebuild itself outside of the shadow of one specific individual or entity. I think the community has responded really well. Obviously there's a price impact, but we've seen how prices can move in crypto pretty dramatically over very short periods of time. So, overall, we still remain pretty optimistic and excited about the project. It's maybe one of the only novel architectures in this space that has the ability to kind of build something that works at the scale that we think financial infrastructure potentially needs to. So.
And when do you think Firedancer might be implemented, or how far along are you in the work?
The awesome thing about Firedancer is it's being built completely in the open. And so anyone can sign into the GitHub and see like the flurry of commits that come in, on a very consistent weekly basis. The project is very new and fresh. And so, right now a lot of work is being done on completing some early milestones in the networking component. And the idea is to build it modularly. And so there's going to be, a networking chunk that goes in, that gets built out, and then that gets inserted as a library in the existing client that then gets circulated through the Solana ecosystem, and then we'll work on the next piece. And so there's a lot of progress. Promising timelines on any engineering deliverable is a fool's errand, especially for something so complex and so early. But we feel good that we'll probably have something to show and something. We already did some demos early on at Solana Breakpoint this November. But in having some code potentially starting to get in test nets and production, in like 12-ish months.
Another big project you guys have really been backing is Wormhole, which is a bridge between, so you can move assets from one blockchain to another. And I think I just read is it now linking 16 different blockchains? Is that the right number?
Yeah, we're up to I think almost up to 22 now. And so it's a very fast growing network.
It's moving fast. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why this is important? And then there have been some issues, some security stuff that's happened. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But first of all, like, what's the problem that Wormhole solves?
The Through the last few years, we've seen the rise of a lot of different blockchain networks. For all the people observing, there's a lot of new tokens. There's Sol, there's Near, there's Avalanche, there's Ethereum, there's BNB, Polygon, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these blockchains have existed as kind of their own silos, their own kind of walled gardens of compute environments that have had activity kind of happening inside of them, but there's no way to conduct commerce amongst them. And so there's a lot of interesting kind of activity that's going on within each of these chains, but the assets and the information and the state that's being created hasn't been able to be transmitted across the borders. So Wormhole is an interoperability solution that aims to connect these blockchains and provide interfaces to let blockchain apps be built across chains, and for assets to move across chains, NFTs to move across chains. Just enable the movement of information and state across these borders. And so, as we said kind of earlier in this conversation, it's up to about 22 networks. It's one of the most adopted interoperability protocols in the space right now. It did have the security incident, and definitely happy to speak to it. There's a breach in one of the Solana contracts that comprised of the Wormhole network in February. It was to the tune of about $320 million of Ethereum. At Jump, we made the decision to fill that hole. The hole was the decision was made very quickly. The hole was patched, and the bridge was restarted live in under 24 hours. And the protocol has had pretty significant adoption since. Security in smart contracts is hard. It's like rocket ship engineering. You don't get an opportunity to patch a bug. You don't get an opportunity to get take two once the breach is in. It's in. Code is unfortunately kind of non-negotiable.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting because at the protocol level, most blockchains are quite secure, but when you start talking about bridges or something like Wormhole, then you can kind of introduce a weak link there. And we've seen it, like there was the Ronin bridge, the Wormhole event. There's been others. If you, in as layman terms as possible, what is it about a bridge that makes it sort of a weaker link or an attractive target for hackers?
So bridges have definitely become big honeypots just by virtue of the assets that they've been used to transmit. But just one misconception that I'd like to kind of clear up overall is that similar bugs don't exist at the protocol level. So if you look at the Solana blockchain, even if you look at Ethereum, you look at Polygon, you look at Near, even Optimism recently, they've had vulnerabilities in how in their code base, in the code base that implements the protocol itself. And so, there's a few different levels of security. There is soundness of the protocol itself. Is the trust model that this protocol espouses safe? And for a lot of products and blockchains, you can say yes. And then it's like, okay, is the implementation of this protocol safe? And over the last 5 years in crypto, we've actually found, no. And tons and tons of layer one blockchains have had very serious security vulnerabilities that have been patched. Quietly, efficiently, but in the dark. And thankfully, none of them have been exploited too terribly to have exploits that have compromised the entire layer one blockchain to start. Optimism had one that was recently reported, that was patched. It wasn't exploited for too much coin. But much like any other complicated protocol, like a layer one blockchain or another complicated application, bridge contracts can be complicated. And additionally, they're very attractive targets because the contracts that are built on top of these interoperability networks tend to custody.
Yeah, because if I just jump in, like what you're doing is maybe you want to move ETH over to Solana from the Ethereum blockchain. So you park your ETH in the bridge contract, and then you get I don't know what's ETH called on Solana, but it's a version of it, right? And then you can use that, but the ETH that you're using on Solana is backed by the ETH that you've kind of put as collateral in the bridge contract, right? So that's where you're talking about like a honeypot. So these contracts, these bridge contracts, are going to tend to hold a whole bunch of crypto, and that makes them very attractive for thieves, basically.
Yep. That's exactly right, Matt. Now, the one thing that and there has been a lot of bridge hacks recently, which is why I think they've entered a lot of the popular discussion. Um, the class of vulnerabilities that have been exploited outside of the Ronin bridge example are very similar to exploits that could exist on Uniswap, for example. Uniswap contracts custody a lot of funds. Like, when there's billions and billions of what is called total value locked in the ecosystem, and that's a honeypot too. So are lending protocols, so are a bunch of others. And over the last many years, all these protocols, or like not talking about them individually, but as a class of protocols, have been exploited pretty aggressively. Um, and
Yeah.
they didn't, because of the development and the stage in crypto, they thankfully weren't as much money. But they've all been exploited very aggressively over years and years. And as a result of that, there's been an emergence of a lot of battle-hardened code, battle-hardened patterns that now make it, because thankfully feel like those products are more secure, right? That those smart contracts are more secure than others. Bridges are new. Bridges are complicated because they interact with multiple different blockchains, working in different contexts, and that paired with the fact that at the height of the crypto bull market, the numbers that we're talking about are pretty big here, make them very attractive honeypots that have eventually been exploited by nefarious actors.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you were talking about originally, like, the need for wormhole and for other bridges is because all these different blockchains have sort of grown up and become silos. And one of the things that crypto and sort of decentralized applications wanted to change was sort of the siloed nature of the way that traditional finance works, or traditional corporate governance works, where it's a very siloed thing, and you've got centralized actors. So I just find it a little ironic. I hadn't thought about it like that, where, with all these different chains, it's sort of like it's recreating that model a little bit. But I think obviously that's not the goal here, but it's just sort of like maybe it's a human sort of predilection to do something like that. But I wanted to just get your thoughts. There's a lot going on in crypto right now. A lot of big firms, have gone down. How's Jump doing? How are you guys? And how do you see the bigger picture right now as a firm that's been there, almost as long as anybody?
Thankfully, Matt, we're doing fine. I think it's publicly well known that Jump had deposits in FTX at the time that this event occurred. We have a very seasoned and mature risk team. We have lots of checks and balances. Checks and balances can slow you down, but recently I find myself thanking our controls and legal and risk and finance team for kind of having for playing the role that they do. And our risk and exchange exposure has always been managed according to a lot of policies that we've built over the years. And that leaves us, in a position where we're very well capitalized in an industry that's, dry of liquidity, dry of capital, and potentially heading into a rough patch again, right? This kind of feels like back in 2018 and 2019, where there wasn't much going on. There really isn't much sentiment, much excitement, but it's where a lot of the building was done, and so we're. The effort that we've built here is always been to be able to realize value in kind of very long time scales, because that's kind of what the ethos of this firm largely has been prior to even me being here. And so we feel very optimistic, still very committed to crypto. We think it's going to be a cold winter for a good bit, but that well capitalized actors are going to come out pretty strong on the other end.
Yeah, and I've been talking to people. We're doing a year-end sort of look back at 2022. So I've been talking to a lot of people and asking them like what was the best and the worst thing and most surprising thing that happened. And a lot of people are talking about, brought up, everything kind of sucks and there's a lot of mistrust right now. But then you've got Goldman Sachs coming out and saying that they want to buy Web3 companies because they think now the valuations are fair. And you've got Starbucks coming out on Polygon, testing its rewards program that's blockchain based, and you've got Reddit, who's, issuing digital wallets on Polygon. You've got Nike doing NFTs. So, these are big, kind of rather conservative companies who obviously see that the technology is there and is obviously a lot of people lost money in a lot of different things going back to Terra and Luna that kind of started the whole last 6 or 8 months of what can only be called a shit show, but the underlying tech is there, and I think that's kind of been a silver lining that I've taken away from some of these conversations I've had with people, that rather than running away, big companies and corporations and brands seem to be embracing it, actually.
Definitely agree with everything you're saying, Matt. This bear feels different than the last one. I think it's easy to identify what the worst has been, but maybe if I can, I'll try to pick 2 themes of silver linings, and kind of things that we're particularly excited about overall. The whole FTX situation, in and of itself, has accelerated the absolute evisceration of trust in we've had as society and as a crypto industry overall. The decentralization now actually makes your BOTs better. It's a dimension in the product that's actually useful, that people are actually looking for, where people are willing to pay for exporting trust. And as globalization dissolves, as social trust, as trust in the social contract continues to erode, that bubbles up into value for what this industry has been building for an extended period of time. It's not good societally, without a doubt, but I think it's validated a lot of the principles that this industry was predicated on and built on. And the other one is, there's people building stuff in this industry have had to solve too many problems to build anything. There's a problem of having to invent too much stuff, which takes away the ability to actually iterate on product market feedback, and just product market fit overall. And with the maturity of infrastructure, with the maturity of companies building tooling, experiences, analytics, we're still a ways away. It still feels raw, but it feels like it's just getting better all the time. And so that's the silver lining that I'll take away from the year.
Yeah. All right. I love ending on silver linings. Let's do it there. And I should have said this right at the top, but congratulations on being one of CoinDesk's most influential people in crypto for 2022. I'm sure there's got to be some 30 under 30 lists that you're going to be hitting here. You've got, 4 more years for that? So
yeah, I got some time.
Yeah, but Kanav, thank you so much. Really appreciated talking to you, and learned a lot, and just really thank you for sharing details about your background and where you came from. Why don't you tell folks where to find you and how to find Jump Crypto?
You can find me on Twitter at Kanav Kariya. You can find Jump at Jump_ on Twitter. And yeah, thanks a lot for having me on.
Well, hey, that's it for another episode of Decent People. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Check us out on the web at decential.io. We're on Twitter at Decential Media. Our shows are produced by Matt Solon. The music is courtesy of Brian Duncan and Kareem Imes. Thanks so much. Take care.